My name is Mashooq Badar. I'm one of the co-founders of Codurance. We're a software consultancy built on the software craftsmanship mindset. This talk isn't exactly about software craftsmanship, but if you want to know more about it, I can tell you all about it later on. But there are some hints in the talk as well. Okay, so let's get started. Right. Okay, looks a bit different. Right. So I am from an engineering background. So as you can tell from my slides, they're not going to look beautiful, but they'll get the message across. Right. So product development. It's actually quite a messy, scrappy activity to do. Right. It requires a lot of reaction, a lot of understanding, sensing, and so on. And what you need is a tight knit team that can work together and quickly adapt and be agile, basically. And what often happens is that we tend to divide this team into kind of multiple teams, multiple phases, and so on. And especially, we tend to make a divide between building the thing right, which is often related to discovery and so on, and building the right thing, which is often related to delivery. And we tend to divide those two, and that really adds to the problems that we have. It's already a complicated thing, and we end up making it more complicated. So that's what we are going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how can we bring those together and create this whole team approach. And it's nothing new. I'm not going to be talking about anything new, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to be talking about ChatGPT either. I didn't use any of that to create any of the slides. Maybe I should have. Right. So just a bit of history, right? So in 2001, a bunch of people got together and went up a mountain, I'd say. And they were either practitioners or founders of some of these agile tools, what we call agile now. So the Scrum, RAD, FD, DSDM, extreme programming, they all got together, and the purpose of their kind of summit was to try to understand what is the problem that they're trying to fix with these new frameworks, these new ways of working and building software. And what they came up with was that this was their kind of ways of working was almost a reaction to waterfall. They were tired of these kind of long phases. They were tired of multiple streams with big handovers between them and so on, and very large teams, and not developing products effectively. And so that's what they were coming up with. And they basically came up with the Agile Manifesto, which is exactly about having tighter iterations, having more feedback, being close to the user, valuing interactions and individuals over documents and all those kind of things. We all know the manifesto. So that's how it started. They championed the kind of the cross-functional team model. They championed the tight iteration model. But those were good intentions. So they called it Agile. It became quite big and famous, and people started scaling it and so on. And more, it started looking like waterfall. They started having those streams. You started getting all these kind of different streams of management and programs and all sorts of things that happened first, and then work got fed back into backlogs and so on, that and features that were fed to delivery, and they kind of just did the features, and they were asked about where's my next feature and when will it be done. So this is how it kind of started getting divided again. Basically, it was kind of a legacy of waterfall in a way as well, and legacy of the way that the organizations were then, and they just kind of took that and started morphing it back to what it was. So you had kind of product and you have delivery at the bottom. A bunch of things started getting in the middle, and they started kind of having these different phases. And what you had was kind of management coming from the top and status reporting going from the back. But hey, as long as we're doing daily stand-ups and retros and so on, we're doing Agile, right? So basically they went and they kind of divided again, building the right thing and building it right. They kind of divided this organizationally again and got back to the same problem. This is kind of a modern way of looking at it. They see, okay, sometimes they call it dual track, sometimes they call it, we've got strategy, and then we've got discovery, and then we have delivery, and there's kind of feedback loops and so on. But at the end of the day, it's different teams, it's different phases, and it's not very agile. So then we see all these kind of symptoms, right? And when I was writing them down, and I still didn't use ChatGPT. Why not? I missed a chance, right? So I was writing these down, and I was thinking, like, it almost seems a bit unfair to kind of lay it at the door of the way that we've kind of divided these things, that we are now different teams and so on. But the shoe fits. It's, each single one of those I've met in my career working for lots of different clients and so on. And the root cause is often organizational, and it's often how the teams are separated at artificial boundaries. Basically, the teams are separated by capability rather than goals and value. So anyway, I'm not going to go through all this, but some of those should resonate. So, a bit more history. Software craftsmanship was a few of those people and a few more from the agile time. They went back up a hill again. I think it was a different one this time. This was in 2010, and they said, well, the agile, the way we envisioned it, is not being applied well. It's not working. So what's the problem? How do we fix it? And so they came up with another manifesto, which was an addition to the Agile manifesto. And it was intended to bring the focus back into this whole team, into well-crafted software, into the team that is actually a community of professionals that is working in partnership with the user, and with their stakeholders, right? So they try to bring that focus back into even some aspects of software craftsmanship when kind of took the well-crafted bit a bit too seriously and so on, but that's how it goes. So, but the point is that building the thing right, the product, and building it right, and building the right thing and building it right. Sorry, they are not two separate things. They are actually two sides of the same coin. And if you try to divide at that point, you're going to have more problems. And this is what we keep doing, basically. That's the whole point. Right. So let's describe what is the whole team approach. I mean, this is nothing new, right? The idea of the cross-functional team has been around for a very long time, right? Way before Agile, those frameworks that I mentioned earlier, they were talking about it before Agile. So what is this idea, right? XP has it, other people have it as well. By the way, XP stands for extreme programming. I don't know, how many people have heard of extreme programming? Not a lot. It's not about programming. It's actually, programming is a very small part of it. It's one of the worst named Agile kind of frameworks in the world, but it's actually one of the most comprehensive ones as well, right? It talks about the whole team as one of his practices. Talks about customer tests, which is actually being close to the customer. It actually has another practice called customer on site, that the customer has to be that close that you can actually walk to them or have access to them immediately. Those kind of things, right? So this was one of the practices that was kind of at the foundation of Agile, right? So how does XP describe the whole team practice? And in Kent Beck, who's one of the kind of the founders of it, in his book he describes it as the most effective way to develop products is include in the team all the perspectives and skills necessary to succeed. Sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Right? I mean, it's kind of common sense, but we very rarely do it. We don't think about bringing in all the perspectives into one team, and when we look at it, we say, yeah, we should do it, and we talk about cross-functional teams, but we kind of stop somewhere. We don't really buy into the whole thing. So there's these kind of roles. I mean, this is my amazing drawing, but so some of these roles, or a lot of these roles, I took out of this very old book on XP, and they talk about the executive being on the team, right? They had things like copywriters and all sorts, and I've just included a few of them. But the idea is that you bring everyone needed into the team. It doesn't mean that they're full-time in the team, but they are part of the team. And each one of these roles and many other roles, they will lead in their specialities. But what they're doing is they're making sure that the rest of the team is contributing to it, and that everything is visible within the team. That's what makes a team, right? There's a high bandwidth of communication going on between its members, right? That's what makes a team. So, and the user is very close, any other stakeholders are close. Another important element in this is that when the way a team works is not individual roles, right? So I am a developer, so I only develop, I only do the coding, or I'm a UX designer, so I only do the UX design. It's about adjacent roles. Like certain roles you can quite naturally, one person can perform and move into and help and pair and so on. And other roles you need at least an awareness of, but you have a full awareness of everything that's happening within the team. This naturally makes it quite inefficient, right? But it also makes it quite effective, right? So the idea of the whole team is that everyone is working together towards one goal, regardless of their role within the team. They're working toward the goal, and they do what is necessary to get towards that goal. And it doesn't matter what their specialities are, and if they're doing exactly what was said on their job description. So this is from Jeff Patton. Who's heard of Jeff Patton? No? All right. Wrong crowd. So he's basically kind of one of the big trainers in product development. He's has a lot of let's say following in Scrum and all these kind of things as well. Runs many training courses and so on. So he's been quite a pioneer in this area as well. And this is how he describes the what happens in a whole team, right? Where the dual track aspect of discovery and delivery kind of go hand in hand. Or he describes the discovery process as to be highly irregular. It's not the same kind of regular iteration, but it is very iterative, and you kill a lot of things as you go along, and you're learning. And the delivery goes alongside it. It's the same team that's doing it. Not the same people, but the same team that's doing it. And there is, as he describes it, while a product manager, designer, senior engineer may lead and orchestrate the discovery process, they involve the whole team. And they make sure that their work is visible and everyone is aware of their work, right? So this is a whole team thing. The two tracks happen within the same team, not two separate teams. And in fact, he also laments, like when initially they came up with these two dual track, which was actually a paper a long time ago, that dual track has become synonymous with different teams, two different teams. There's product and there's delivery, and that's not what was intended. So establishing a whole team is not easy, as we know. It's easier said than done, right? So there's many challenges, right? Because if you go back and say, well, I'm gonna be creating a whole team, because it does make sense, it's not gonna happen easily, right? Because there is a fundamental shift in the organization, because suddenly from a departmental aligned, you are kind of goals and value aligned and so on. And that takes some doing. There's a lot of cultural change, there's a lot of organizational change. And as we all know, that's very difficult to get going, right? Senior management may feel that they're kind of losing control, right? If you have a head of product and they don't have a product team, they're not going to like that. Or you have a CTO and they don't have an army of developers under them, they're not going to like that. And suddenly you come in and say, well, actually, we're going to create the teams around value. They might pay lip service to it, but they'll make sure that they keep their fiefs, right? Could be seen as an inefficient and not maximizing resources. Like that expensive developer is in that user research session. By the way, Amy, I was very encouraged to see that you're involving those people in the kind of the user research and those things. It's very encouraging. But normally, people don't like that. They say, like, my expensive developer is sat in that meeting doing wishy-washy stuff. No, they need to be banging on the keyboard or like asking ChatGPT how to program the next bit, something. right? Certain roles may feel lonely, right? That's the other thing. You kind of disperse people. Certain roles are not needed in that kind of amount, as it were. You know, you may end up with a lot of developers in the team. You may end up with one or two user UX people, maybe one user research, and so on. They might feel lonely there. They're not in there. They're not with their people. They're not with their role. So they might. That also has an issue. New set of skills are needed for everyone, right? Suddenly people are kind of, developers who only like to develop suddenly now have to contribute to other aspects, and that's not easy. Individual may seem that certain activities are not part of their job, and this often happens. It's like people kind of take issue with that. It's like, this is not my job description, this is not what I was hired to do, this is not my profession. I am doing this. I'm doing an analysis or testing or development or research. I'm not doing this other stuff. And then keeping the team empowered, like keeping the team kind of giving them the autonomy, the control that's needed, keeping their skills so that they kind of match the challenge. These things are not easy. So kind of keeping that environment well nurtured and well protected is not easy either. And then scaling is also complicated, but scaling is complicated regardless. So how do you get it right? I mean, is there no hope then that we will never get to that view, especially in large organizations, that that we would have this whole team that is aligned to a particular goal? Because we always talk about it, but we very rarely see it. And XP actually has a good answer to this, because the way XP practices are arranged is through this. So like you kind of you get a set of shared values, right? And values are not something you put on a board. Values are something that you talk about and that becomes part of your vocabulary, and they're important. And values are never compromised, right? Regardless of the conflicts that exist in the team, if you're aligned on values, you will get to some conclusion, as long as you truly are aligned on those values, and they're not something that's sitting on a kind of framed picture behind you, right? So you align on these values. They are the basis on which you build your practices. Agreed principles are practical guidelines that actually help you do things well, right? They are proven, they're well understood. You might even find new insights and principles that they're like almost the team's knowledge, right? And practices on top of those, and tools and so on, they are repeatable things that help you do things more effectively, right? This is how XP describes the fundamentals of a whole team. You think about the team itself. It's a people thing. You think about those people, what makes them move, what's going to make them move forward, how they're going to make decisions, how they're going to interact with each other. And you don't prescribe too much. You kind of, you allow them to kind of come up with these. But you do start from somewhere, so you can provide a good basis, a good default that they can evolve from. So at Codurance and XP, values are on left, and these are very much values that we aspire to rather ourselves. And on the right are Codurance values, and these are the things that we talk about all the time. Again, they become part of our vocabulary. So when we are looking at our own profession and roles and so on, we look at them through the lens of these values. I'm not going to go through them, by the way. Principles, these are XP and some are Codurance principles as well. Again, we didn't come up with them. We saw them, some are in XP, and we studied them, and we understand that they actually help. And other aspects, like things like clarity and flow and so on. I mean, these things, clarity is about having, everyone making sure that everyone has a clear goal, that the team knows which way they're going, that they have a vision, they understand the strategy, all these kind of things, right? Competence is about, do we have all the right skills necessary? Flow is, are we actually wasteful? Are we moving things in the most effective and efficient manner, right? But there are others as well. Again, it's a starter set. You can build on that, and it's not everything that we have in our principles at Codurance. And practices, again, there are some of them I mentioned, like the dual track, but really understanding what dual track means, right? The close together, automated testing, small releases, so on. These are different practices that really help us build software, build products better. There are many others as well. Again, you agree on practices as a team, and you make sure that the team is competent enough to adapt them and apply them, right? And tools are important. These are some of the tools that I mentioned that actually help us collaboration, that help bridge this gap between the different roles, right? So for example, the business model canvas is a very good and succinct way of understanding strategy, understanding what the business is actually intending. And if you come up with it together, even better, because then you really internalize it. Value proposition canvas helps you get closer to the user, closer to the customer, understand their pains and so on, along with personas and so on, as we're talking about. These are not complex things. Everyone can understand them if they're given enough training, and there is emphasis put on these things within the team itself. Again, I won't go through all of these things, but the important point is that you need to cultivate tools and practices that actually help you come together, that help you see each other's world in a way that where others can contribute. It's not just about information sharing, it's about teamwork. Finally, we'll talk about the challenge of scale, right? Scale is an issue. It's an issue everywhere, right? So if you've got a large organization and you're thinking, well, the whole team, but I've got a big organization, how does the whole team work? I've got like 80, 90 developers and 20 UX designers and so on. How will that work? Well, I'll tell you what won't work is if you start creating capability aligned teams. If you have a UX team or a product team and a development team and so on, right? Or a production team and these kind of things. That is not the way to go. You're making your scale problem worse. You're not making it better. The only way you can, and it will still have its issues, but the only way you can actually make it scale is if you create teams that are aligned to goals, that are cohesive, and they are not too dependent on the other teams. There is material, a lot of material, especially around team topologies and so on, that can help in that area for you to understand how to build these whole teams that are aligned to the business, aligned to goals, and don't rely too much on other teams. And they're basically effectively running almost like mini companies. That's the ideal, or kind of, but you will never get there. But if you try to at least get to some of the way, you might fare better in managing with scale. Thank you.